I can't be your man, even though it kills me. I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if he's on your mind lately. Would you understand, like I understand, that I can't be your man?
What's up everybody, it's Austin here from Make Pop Music and Austin Whole Audio and Visual, and we are back with another tutorial today. And for today's video, I wanted to actually dive into a session that you've probably seen on this channel before. We recently did a video on how to make your vocals really wide, and the song that we used in that is actually a song that I personally dropped today called Even Though It Kills Me. And on that video, a lot of you guys wanted to see me actually dive into the session, tear it apart, and show you everything that's in it. So for today's video, we're gonna hop into that session, the same one that I used to produce the whole track, record all the vocals, mix and master it, and I'm gonna show you everything that's in it from start to finish, and we're gonna go over all of the drums, synths, everything that I did for the vocals, all of the plugins that I used, all of the different ear candy methods I used, and we're gonna just rip that track apart. And if you want, we also have a link in the description that you can download all of the stems. We have a folder of unmixed stems that you can use if you wanna practice mixing. We also have a folder of the mixed stems if you want to use that to practice doing like a remix, tearing it apart, seeing how all of my elements sound independently. You can get all of that in the description below. It's absolutely for free. The only thing you can't do is just use it in your own portfolio, claiming it as your own work. Other than that, I'd love to see you guys practice. If you get any good mixes of the song or you do any cool remixes, definitely shoot them over to support@makepopmusic.com because we would love to check them out. But let's actually hop into the session because there is a lot to tear open here. All right, now that we're actually into the session, I know you heard a preview before the video actually started. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna kind of walk you through as I made it step by step by step. So the first thing that ever came to my mind for this song was actually this ARP right here. I was actually in the shower one day and I just had this like little progression come to my mind. And so the first thing I did was like grab my phone, hopped on GarageBand and just wrote the entire progression. And that's this little guy right here. And it's just a really simple kind of sine wave synth patch that I made in Anna 2. If you want, I'll also go ahead and I'll put all of the presets in the same download that'll have the stems. So I will go ahead and zip all of these up. This one will be called Nikki ARP. And really this is super simple. It's just, like I said, a sine wave, another sine wave up an octave, and that's it. And it's just doing this back and forth. And then I've just EQ'd, added some extra top end, put a little bit of reverb and delay, and took a little bit of bottom out. So I wanted to make it a little buzzier, and that's what I did with that EQ right there. I mean, that makes a really big difference. And then the next thing I did right after that was I went ahead and added these kind of chords in with a pad. And I believe that pad is also in Anna 2, so I'll call this might actually be one of their presets, JX3P pad. Definitely one of their stock plugins. So I'm not gonna go ahead and include that, but I went ahead and did all of this. And those are just kind of the same chords under that ARP. And that's really just being processed with a compressor that's being sidechained to the kick when that actually comes in. And then H delay, which is just giving it a little bit of space. And then again, boosting some top end on the EQ. So I had both of those things, and then I started getting my initial idea for the vocal. And so that's where I went ahead and I started getting out a pen and paper. Actually, I probably took out my phone, and then I just started tracking this vocal. And this is a very similar chain to what we're always doing on the channel. You know, EQ, compress, DS, DS, EQ, EQ, and then send to all the usual suspects. So that kind of sounds like this all together.
I knew this was coming, it wasn't a surprise, cause you were never happy when I was in your eyes. I know we've been sleeping in a bed that's full of lies every night.
So it's really simple right now. It's got a really, really good melody and it's got some nice chords under it, so I didn't want to fluff up the production too much. I will go ahead and at least like show you guys what was going on with the vocal chain. I did track it on the Slate ML1. I used the FG800, boosted a little bit of top end, took a little bit of like 2K out, popped in a little bit of like the 1.5, and then scooped out quite a bit of like the 200. and then also got rid of everything under 100 hertz. Just use the Vocal Classic, doing probably 3 to 5.
Every night, you enough. I thought what we had was really.
Yeah, doing 3 to 5 dB of gain reduction, and then just added a 2A to do
really lovely.
a lot of squeezing on that back end, and then just de-essed, and I'm kind of attacking two different areas here. One is attacking the actual S sound, and one is attacking like the TH sound. And then what I did was I went ahead and got rid of everything under 120 because it was just kind of boomy. And then I added a dynamic EQ right here on this 240.
Just full of lies.
Just for when I would come in, I was noticing there was like a weird little amount of boominess. And then all I did was I added a little bit of top end and scooped a little bit of that 800 and a little more of that 200 out. And then I sent it to all of the things that we talked about in the actual how to add width video, so I'm not going to do that on this one. If you want to go check that out, we'll have a link in that description. But now we've got that vocal chain. That's pretty much what gets copied and pasted to all of these, so we won't go over that a lot in the future. But let's go ahead and start talking about the drums that we added on. So we've got the ARP, we've got the pad, we've got our vocal idea. Then I just added a kick, and the kick that I used is Sauce. It's from one of our packs, and I can't remember which one off the top of my head right now. Probably the hip hop pack. And then I've got some snaps and some claps. So we've got this.
I knew this was coming. It wasn't a surprise. Cause you were never happy when I was in your eyes. I know we were sleeping.
So it's pretty simple right now. Well, all I did to the kick was added some Camel Crusher, so we got a little bit of saturation and some compression. And then I did go ahead and I boosted like at 56 because I wanted a more subby kind of punchy kick instead of something in the kind of like 70 to 100 region. And then scooped out some lows and popped in some more of that clicky top end. I'm sorry, scooped out some mids. So this is just kind of boxy right here.
No surprise, cause you were never happy when I was in your eyes.
Didn't really need it in this song, so I got rid of it. And then on the snaps, I've got eighth delay going back and forth. It's actually an eighth dotted, and that just gives it some space. And then I've got some reverb, Verb Suite coming in clutch again, using the 480 to do just like a 1.8 second plate. So now we've got all of this together.
I knew this was coming. It wasn't a surprise.
And I realized that I wanted a little bit more body in it, so I added this kind of 808 pad. At first I actually had just a traditional 808, but I realized that it was just kind of like stale and boring and didn't give me a lot of the width that I wanted with such a sparse arrangement. So I swapped out the 808 for this Formant pad. Again, I'll put this preset in the actual download pack. And then all this is really doing is this.
I knew this was coming. It wasn't a surprise. Cause you were never happy when I was in your eyes. I know we were sleeping in a bed that's full of lies.
And if you have our Saucy bass pack, you already have this because that was in that pack forever ago. Then after we've got the bass, I noticed that the ARP was kind of falling to the background just a little bit. So I did layer it up with this kind of square ARP instead of a sine ARP. And again, in Anna, I'll go ahead and I'll include this. I'll call this Nikki ARP 2 since it is square instead of sine.
I knew this was coming. It wasn't a surprise. Cause you.
And that layers over with the sine really nicely. It's just giving me some buzzy, like top end. So now we've got all of that. I started adding some vocal production. So I added this low octave that I always spread out with doubler. It's just auto-tune. Tuned down 12 semitones. You could use any tuning plugin to do the same thing. The normal vocal chain, and then I threw doubler on and used doubler for voices, and that gives me this effect. Layered that under.
When I was in your eyes, I know we were sleeping.
And then the last little bit of vocal production I did on this verse right here was just added this extra little delay throw. Same vocal chain as the lead vocal, but I did put on H delay at 1/4, 100% wet. And then what I did was just filter that out and threw a little bit of reverb on and then filtered that out quite a bit. And that's really just coming in on certain words and phrases, so you'll hear it right here.
I knew this was coming. It wasn't a surprise. Cause you were never happy when I was in.
So we have that delay throw kind of going throughout the song. You'll see it a few times. Just wanted to talk about it once. That's a good way to add some extra tail is like A lot of the time if I want the vocal to be a little bit more dry in the mix, I'll have a reverb or a delay throw that I'll just actually print onto another track, and then I'll just make it 100% wet and blend it in however I want. We did have a couple little impacts right here. We have a clap impact and another big clap impact.
I knew this was coming, it wasn't a surprise, 'cause you were never happy when I was in your eyes. I know.
So it's a pretty sparse arrangement in the verse. We're about to build it up a little bit more, but before we do, I wanted to just show you all these vocals that I actually layered over right here.
I know we've been sleeping in a bed that's full of lies every night.
So I like doing that on keywords and key phrases, and you can see the double actually comes in for this next part, and then the chorus is hella stacked. So we have just the same vocal right here on the right and left.
Every night.
Those are retracked. You can't just copy and paste them because they'll phase out in the middle. So I did retrack all of that.
Every night.
Then I also have like a high harmony right here.
Every night.
So all of those together with that low octave, and then a low octave delay throw. Same thing as the other delay throw, but with process just how we process the low octave. So tune it down in auto tune, spread it out with doubler.
A bed that's full of lies every night.
Now for this part, now we've got some extra stuff coming in. So we'll talk about the percussion first, because we needed a lot more energy to actually carry into this next part. So the main thing we did was we added these two loops, and these are actually both from our Sounds of Life pack. I use those loops all the time because they're a nice way to add some movement without pulling in hi-hats early in a song, or if you're just trying to stay away from the trap hats in general. And we just use this one right here that's called Just Vibin'. And let's take a listen to that by itself. I did process it actually. This is what it sounds like straight out of the box. So I threw Snap Heap on the wide widener. Just adds like this nice little chorusy, phasey effect. They just added a nice little bit of space, kind of sits in well with that bass pad. And then I threw on a 2A, just kind of doing some like drum style compression to bring the transients down a little bit more, but pull that like kind of stuttery part up at the end. Just to make it a little bit more squishy so it's not poking out so much. So we have that loop, and then we also have this little movement loop that's not really processed at all. And this is really nice to add instead of like a shaker or something like that because it's a bit more dynamic. So we have all of that, and then we added a snare. I believe this is from our Popstar pack. It's just a grande snare, tuned down 4 semitones. And did we process it with anything? Nope, just boosted the 300 a little bit just to give it some pop. With the drums now, we've got the drums, the same bass, the same lead vocal, but we did bring in duplicates on the left and the right.
I thought I'd given you enough. I thought what we had was really love. Leave it up to me to fuck.
Having those two different percussive kind of Foley elements really brings in a lot more energy. And I feel like that's where the verse starts to really kind of like find its groove. And then we did bring in one more synth right here. And I just wanted like this nice bubbly sparkly synth. I've never really done anything like that in one of my songs, so I figured why not? This song is like kind of dreamy, kind of bubbly anyway. So I did add a dream ARP. I'll include that in the download pack as well. And that's really just doing a lot of movement. This is why I like Anna too though, is because they have a really nice ARP section built in to where I just held down the keys and then just pop this in here and it kind of does all the work for me. As you can see, these are just sustained chords. And I really like doing that because that's a nice way to just add some extra movement but not have to figure out different melodies that you want to play in your head. And they have a lot of really cool just presets in there for what you can do with actually making your own ARPs where you don't have to create them completely from scratch. Last thing that we added was I added like my own little version of a riser, and that's this little fast ARP. And I'll go ahead and I'll include this as well. This one is actually played instead of just done as an ARP because I wanted to have my own, you know, kind of customization to it. And it's basically just running up on that chord on a couple different octaves. So it runs up and then runs down. And you'll hear that right here. And that just adds a really cool kind of transition instead of adding another like reverse swell or something like that. Because I didn't want a lot of energy change. I just wanted something that was, you know, pleasant on the ear.
Every night, I thought I'd give you a...
And it's tucked in really quietly. The other only reverse element that we have pretty much in the verses at all is this little reverse right here. And that was just played with like a pad that I played on Anna, printed the pad, bit crushed it, and then printed that and then reversed it. So this is just a print of a pad, put some reverb and bit crush on it, print that, reverse it, and it's just super simple. And to me, that was two really, really nice organic ways to add some extra tension in without adding a whole bunch of like weird sound design. So now we've added some extra percussion, we've added one more synth, we've got these cool little organic kind of risers. We are going ahead and stacking the vocals on the left and right now, and here's
Giving you enough, I thought what we had was real.
here's what it sounds like with that. So I'll kind of show you guys what it sounded like without the side vocals and then with it.
Thought I'd given you enough, I thought what we had was really love. Leave it up to me to fuck.
And now I'm gonna pop them back in.
I thought I'd given you enough, I thought what we had was really love. Leave it up to me.
And I really just wanted to add those in to get that kind of wider, dreamier sound on the second half, because we have a really minimal vocal for the first part of the verse. We have a vocal that's still minimal but wide for the second part of the verse. And then for the pre-chorus and the chorus, we have a lot of vocals. So I'm kind of building it up in stages as I would like layering synths. So now we're coming to the end of the verse. There is a swell right here. It's like a jingle bell crash that was in our Sounds of Life pack. That's reversed, and then we've just got another delay throw. Here's what it sounds like when the verse is actually ending going into that pre-chorus or chorus.
Suffocating never made us close, but I just really needed you to know. I don't wanna wait if we're...
So we have that nice kind of like cinematic style riser. And then I've got a reverbed kick right here. It's literally just the same kick that's in the track. And then I put a bunch of reverb on it and then printed it and put even more reverb on it. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't have a kick in this section. However, I did want some kind of big, kind of low end statement. So here's how that sounds. And then we also have this little high like tape stick down hit. Then we've got a riser that will come in. Also from Sounds of Life. And then we have this bass drop that comes in with that low kick. So we've got it kind of ending, and then it just fades out to really almost nothing but the vocals. And I wanted to do this because I love like false choruses, and I love when you think that everything's gonna get huge and then it doesn't. And then we just have that same first ARP and that same vintage pad, and then that same bell kind of reverse. So the production for this pre-chorus, or I guess you could even call it a chorus, is really, really simple. It's just 2 elements. And as you can see, I put ladder filter on from Kilohertz, and I went ahead and automated that up so it kind of drowns out and then comes back in. And the reason I could get away with having this so minimal is we do a lot with the vocals on this song. So I'll show you what it sounds like without vocals. Doesn't really have much there. However, we have a lead vocal, we have that lower wide octave vocal, we've got a vocal on the left, a vocal on the right that are all doing that lead melody. We've got a harmony on the left and a harmony on the right, and then we've also got a vocoder that's stacking with the chords that are actually being played from this vintage pad. So we've done a vocoder video before. I'm not gonna dive in a lot on how to actually make that for the track. If you want, we'll also link our vocoder video in the description so you can see how to make those from scratch. But here's what all the vocals sound like together.
I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if he's on your mind lately. Would you understand, like I understand, I can't be your man.
And the reason we can get away with filtering a lot of that synth out is because since we do have the vocoder, it is carrying like the chords and all of the different, you know, notes and counter melodies that are actually within the song. So we don't have to keep those synths going really at all. Let's see what it sounds like if we just dropped them out completely.
I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if he's on your mind.
Still pretty full. I just like the extra melody from the ARP and just that kind of support that the pad adds.
I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if he's on your mind.
So that's pretty much it, except for when we get to the last little even though it kills me, and that's just my vocal chain added with a bit crusher and decapitator. And that's just adding a nice little bit of crunch. So it sounds really funky, I love it.
Even though it kills me.
And then I added the low vocal, which is very similar to the low vocal we've been using throughout the whole song, but also added bit crusher and decapitator. So that sounds like this now. And then layered over with it.
Even though it kills me.
And I went ahead to automate all of the reverbs and delays off, and I automated the synth bus off. So there's a huge stop right here.
Instead, I can't be your man. Even though it kills me. I don't wanna.
And to me, that's just a good example of how sometimes less is more. Sometimes instead of adding a bunch of risers and adding a bunch of different effects and kind of transitional elements, the best thing to do is actually pull everything out, because once this chorus comes in, it sounds huge now. So let's go ahead and talk about what we're adding up to this chorus. We've got the same kick, the same snaps, the same snares, the same 2 movement loops from before. However, now we're adding another kick to add some top end because there's a lot more synth to compete with. And it's the same exact kick, and what I've done is I've filtered out all the lows and the low mids, camel crushed it, added a transient designer, and then even took out more mids right here. So we're literally just getting the like kind of mid to top end of that. And I just wanted a little bit of extra click, because without it, the kick gets a little lost.
I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna.
Having that top end is just a good way to you know, make sure that on a cell phone or on some cheap headphones or something like that, you'll be able to hear the kick. So same kick, same snaps, same snares. Let's go ahead and talk about this hi-hat loop. It's just a simple hi-hat loop from Splice, nothing crazy going on. It sounds really good up the middle though, with all these Foley loops and kind of movement loops that are going side to side. We've got a big clap impact. We've got a big clap that's on that first snare hit. We've got a little droplet hit right here. And that's from our Sounds of Life pack, and I just tuned it to the song. So now we've got kick, snare, snap, movement loop, Foley loop, hi-hat loop, droplet hit layered over the snare, and then a couple different extra claps as like kind of auxiliary percussion. Then we just have that Scotch glass anvil riser kind of out of it. And then going into the verse is going to be the same thing that we did going into the first like pre-chorus. So let's talk about what we added in terms of synths. I've got everything that we had from the second part of the verse, so the initial ARP, the initial pad, the second square ARP, the fast, like really bubbly ARP. We've got that little sprinkly kind of like transitional synth, and then this is where we add a lot more stuff. So we've got a new synth right here. And that's just a bell out of Omnisphere. And the reason I did that was because I added a nice little bit of top end without being super digital or super aggressive. And that is just the coiling Zimbira 1. If I said that wrong, feel free to crucify me. We've also got this Dreamy Bell right here doing the exact same thing. And that is also an Omnisphere using the preset coiling Zimbra 1 again. I think it's just maybe up an octave. And then we have these extra Nicky plucks. Doing the same thing as a square ARP, it just kind of adds, it's a little pokier, adds a nice little bit of transient attack. That's also an Omnisphere. Let's see what we're doing for that. And then the processing on all of these is really simple. It's just stereo reverb, stereo delay, filtering out some low ends. That's called Sine Pluckies. So we've got Sine Pluckies and then some coiling Zimbiras. And then we've got this big 80s pad. And this one adds a lot of different body to the actual chorus. We needed a lot more brightness to it, and so this is in Serum. This is from a pack that I got off of Splice forever ago. It's like this like retro wave kind of pack. Super, super good for like any kind of like synth pop sounds or anything like that. So now all of the synths together, we've added a lot more top end and a lot more body in general. And then we've got the same exact bass pad. And the real sauce is the actual vocals. So even though it's the same exact words, I sang it again with more intensity for the chorus. So I didn't just copy and paste this over. And I've got the main vocal in the middle, the low octave that has doubler on it, the main vocal on the left, the main vocal on the right, and then we've got these harmonies on the left and right.
Done, baby. I don't wanna stay.
I love adding higher falsetto elements because it adds a nice little bit of brightness, and you can tune them pretty hard because they just sit right in the mix. Then we added this second little harmony right here.
I don't wanna wait. If what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay. If he's on your mind lately, would you understand? Like.
And a lot of the times what I like to do in songs is I'll add an extra vocal reverb, which is just the exact same element as the main vocal chain, but then I'll just put Verb Suite straight on it and have a huge Hall setting and then turn it to 100% wet so I can kind of automate this in and not have to make a whole nother send just for this one area of the song. And that sounds like this by itself. Then when I layer it over with the main vocal.
I don't wanna wait. If what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay. If he's on your mind lately, would.
And then we do have a vocoder as well in this.
I don't wanna wait. If what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay. If
he's on your mind lately, would you understand?
And then putting all of those simple elements together to create this big wall of like spacey, kind of dreamy sound sounds like this.
Even though it kills me, I don't wanna wait. If what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay. If he's on your mind lately, would you understand?
Now let's just move quickly through the second verse and everything because the arrangement doesn't really change a ton. We've got the second verse right here.
I've been feeling empty. I know you feel the same.
So what we did for this was we had that same reverb kick and that same tape down hit, added this little rim hit, just with reverb and delay added on, and I added this little kind of like plucky high snap. And I alternated the rim hit, so sometimes the rim hit is layered over, other times it's just that little snap. And I like to do that just to create a little bit of different movement and depth because it gets boring if everything is layered the exact same the entire way. So I just kind of, took and gave alternatively. So we have all of that, and then we have a whole new pad that we didn't have before. This is an Omnisphere, and this is doing In Memoriam 2. And this is actually not really a pad, it's like a whole new melody because I was getting a little exhausted of that same like boo doo 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 little arp. So I just changed it up. Just to give you a little bit of a break from that. Then we have this pad that I actually printed out. That was definitely made in Anna. I just can't remember exactly why I printed it out. I think it was like a lot of voices and it was giving me some CPU issues. And then just boosted a little bit of top end on that.
I've been feeling empty. I know you feel the same. I don't know the last time I heard you say my name.
And then once we go into where everything kind of kicks up all together, it's the same exact arrangement as before when we have everything come in. However, I added one more pluck and the bass doesn't sustain. So right here.
I thought I'd given you enough. I thought what we had.
I kept the same vocal melody, so I wanted to change the arrangement a little bit. So I cut the bass off and I added these just to give me a little bit more attack. And then we have all of that together.
Broken picture frames are all I have. Memories of you are flooding back. I hope he can give you what I left.
And I didn't pull the snare in there because I didn't need it to be bigger than the part before. So that just kind of differentiates it from where otherwise it would be exactly the same as the first verse. And I like to do that a lot, is like I'll copy and paste and then I'll just swap out a couple elements here and there, or I'll just kind of like give and take from different areas. That way I don't have to do completely different arrangements for everything. This actual like pre-chorus area, exactly the same.
I don't wanna wait for.
So that's all exactly the same, nothing changed whatsoever. Chorus is all the same.
I don't wanna wait if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if.
The only thing I did was I added kind of an extension to the chorus, which kind of serves as a bridge. And that is the same melody as the chorus, it's just adding kind of a new narrative to the story. And so we'll go into that so you can kind of hear what I did lyrically.
I don't wanna hear maybe. Leave me in the cold, now my soul is left aching. Do you understand? Like I understand that I should be your man, even if it kills me.
Now we're actually into this like kind of bridge, and it's the arp and the crushed bell that are actually from verse 2. And then I just added this extra little arp on top to give me a nice little bubbly sense again. And this is called Stranger Things. It was in the On the Charts pack that we gave away, but I will include it in this. And then what we did for the vocals was I just had it on this whole different chain. Normal vocal chain, added bit crusher, added decapitator, added a lot of delay and reverb. And then the main sauce from this is actually me automating the 4-minute throat length on Auto-Tune. So I'll show you guys as we go through it. And that just added like this nice little kind of rest, because we are going back into the final chorus. But what I did for the final chorus was I removed all the snaps, all the snares, all of the different like hi-hat Foley movement loops, and it's literally just a kick, and everything is like big and sustaining with all the vocals. And to me, this is my favorite part. It just sounds really cinematic, sounds really, really nice and pretty. Here's what that sounds like all coming in.
I don't wanna wait if what's done is done, baby. I don't wanna stay if he's on your mind lately. Would you understand, like I understand, that I can't be your man, even though it kills me?
So all I did for that was, it's the exact same arrangement of the synths from the choruses before. I just also added in that arp that we just put in the bridge to layer over it to give it a little bit more movement. Same kicks, same impacts and everything. The bass is exactly the same. I just didn't add the little notes that kind of jump up and jump down. And then we just end it with Even Though It Kills Me. There is some automation and stuff on this track, like we talked about the filter automation before. One thing that we didn't talk about earlier that I'll address before we kind of wrap this up is that I believe it is the vintage pad that's kind of like sidechain compressed. And that just adds a nice little bit of movement, because otherwise it's just almost too atmospheric and spacey. But that's pretty much the entire arrangement. If you guys want, again, download the stems. You can kind of dissect them all at your own will. Use whatever you want. I'll include some of the presets and samples from this in there. If you like the song, definitely go check it out on Spotify. I would love all of the support. If you like a lot of the songs we do on this channel, a lot of them are mine. Feel free to go over to Spotify and take a listen to those. Follow me, like the song, pick it up, illegally download it. I don't really give a shit. As long as you're listening, I love it, and thank you so much for the support. Other than that, I think that wraps up this whole production. And that about does it. It's a big project, but it is a pretty simple song. As you can see, there's not a lot going on melodically. There's not a lot going on in terms of sound design. It's more so just using small elements to layer together to create this big, nice kind of atmospheric landscape. So hopefully you've picked up some tips and tricks that you can use in your own production. Hopefully you kind of learned about a couple new plugins or a couple new methods that I used in this that you want to implement. And if you want, like I said in the intro, feel free to download the stems, mixed or unmixed, and just kind of dissect them however you want, kind of do whatever you want with them. If you did like this video, definitely like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what you guys want to see in the future. If you want more in-depth tutorials or you want more of the sounds that you heard in this video, head over to our website, makepopmusic.com. We've got actual whole courses where we dive into big subjects. We've also got sound packs, we've got sample packs, we've got free content, blog posts, all kinds of good stuff. So head over to makepopmusic.com if you guys like this and show us some support. Other than that, we will see you guys next time. Much love, everybody, and peace out.
I don't wanna wait, if what's done is done.